Okay, that right there is what we are building today. A full production quality SaaS landing page built on Bootstrap 5. And I know what you are thinking. That doesn't look like Bootstrap. That's kind of the point. I want to show you that Bootstrap is a foundation, not a cage. You add your own CSS on top, and suddenly Bootstrap becomes exactly as premium as you want it to be. By the end of this video, you are going to have a navbar that honestly looks like something a real startup would ship. Sticky behavior, frosted glass on scroll, a custom SVG logo, a drop-down with descriptions, a CTA button with a glow effect, and a Hamburger menu that animates from bars to an X. All responsive, all accessible. And I'm going to show you every single line. No magic. No, and now it's done. Every file, every commit, step by step. If you want the complete source code, all 12 stages, every commit, every file, the link is in the description and pinned in the comments. Feel free to hit the like button now, so you don't forget, and if the video doesn't help you by the end, you can always remove it. Let's go. New project folder. I'm calling it Orbit Navbar. You can call it whatever you want. Orbit is a fake SaaS product I invented for this tutorial. And there are 3 files: index.html, style CSS, and main.js. That's it. No build tools, no npm, no webpack, Bootstrap 5 from a CDN. This is intentional. I want you to see that you don't need a complicated setup to build something premium. The main.js and style CSS are empty files. There are just a few commands there. Now let's look at the index.html file. Let's collapse this window. The head section has 3 important things. First, Bootstrap CSS. I'm using version 5.3.3, the latest stable. Second, Google Fonts. I'm loading 3 fonts: Space Grotesque for headlines and display text, Fira code for the mono UI elements like nav-links and labels, and Inter for body text. These 3 together give a really sharp, technical but approachable feel. Notice I'm using link rel preconnect before the Google Fonts URL. That's a performance optimization. Tells the browser to start the DNS lookup and TCP handshake early, before it even downloads the CSS. Small thing, real impact on load time. The Bootstrap JS is commented out for now. We'll uncomment it when we need the collapse to work. I do this intentionally. I want you to understand why we need it and at the exact moment. Now let me open index.html in Chrome. So I'm going to uncollapse this window and right click and open in the integrated browser. Blank white page. Perfect. We have a foundation. So now we are on the first stage where we already set up the project, and let's jump to the next stage where we will add a navbar structure. Let's kill terminal, we don't need it anymore. Let's see the changes comparing to the previous stage. So there are changes only in commands for main.js and style CSS files. You might also notice that there are quite a few commands throughout the code. Those commands are there for you. When you download the source code later, they'll help you understand the purpose behind each section and make it easier to follow along without having to rewatch the entire video. And let's examine the changes in index.html. So I have already added this navbar section, and we will examine this change in details. One thing you'll notice in this project is that I'm not typing every line of code on screen. If I did that, this video would easily run over an hour long. Instead, I'll focus on showing the changes between each stage of the website and explaining why those changes are important, how they work, and when you should use them in your own projects. So I'm closing these differences and I'm closing this window again. So let's focus on this change I already made. So here we have one nav tag. Let's break down every class. Navbar, that's the base Bootstrap class, gives us flex layout, padding, and a few other defaults. Navbar expand large. This is the breakpoint class. It says on screens larger than 992 pixels, show the full horizontal navbar. On anything smaller, collapse it. If I used navbar expand medium, it would collapse sooner at 768 pixels. Navbar expand large is usually the right choice for most nav designs. Navbar dark. This tells Bootstrap that our navbar has a dark background. It flips the next and toggle icon colors to white, so they are visible. Important. This doesn't set a background color. It just adjusts the foreground. Background dark. This sets the dark background color. Bootstrap's dark background. We are using this as a temporary placeholder. In stage 7, we'll remove this and replace it with our own CSS. OB navbar. This is our custom class. OB is the prefix I'm using for orbit. All our custom CSS will use this prefix. It keeps our styles separate from Bootstrap's and prevents conflicts. The container inside centers out content with a max width. By default, Bootstrap's container is responsive. It changes max width at each breakpoint. I've set it to a fixed 1200 pixels in my CSS, which is what most modern landing pages use. Now let's examine what we have now. Let's open it. And we just have this dark stripe. The logo. This is the part people mess up the most. Here is the wrong way. Image tag with source of some logo PNG file with a fixed pixel width. You know what that gives you? A fuzzy logo on Retina screens. A logo that breaks when the background changes. A logo that cannot be styled with CSS. And here is the right way. Inline SVG. We are drawing the logo in code. No image file, no HTTP request. Scales to any size perfectly. Colors with CSS current color. And it can animate with CSS transitions. Let's open it and see what we have. I designed this logo as an orbital system. A planet core is in the center, an orbital ring around it, and two small satellite dots. Let's close this window and return back to the code. 3 circle elements, and that's it. The key trick is fill known on the ring circle and stroke current color. That means the ring's color will match whatever color I set in CSS on the parent element. So when the navbar is dark, the SVG is white. If I change the CSS color to indigo, the whole logo goes indigo. One property controls everything. The span class OB-brand text orbit next to the SVG is just text. The navbar-brand class from Bootstrap already makes it flexbox, so the icon and text align themselves horizontally. That's the inline flex behavior I mentioned in the intro. Notice I have area label orbit home on the A tag, screen readers will announce this as orbit home link instead of trying to read out the SVG. Always do this for icon only or icon plus text logos. Now we build the actual nav links. I have already added this div container. Let's expand the code above and let's expand this div and see what we have inside. The structure is UL, unordered list, with a list of li items. Each item has an A link inside. This is semantically correct. A navigation is a list of links. Bootstrap adds the navbar-now class to style the list, and nav-item, nav-link to style each item and its anchor. MX auto on the unordered list. This is the class I mentioned earlier. It stands for margin X auto, which adds equal left and right margins. Since the parent is flexbox, this effectively centers the nav links horizontally, pushing the brand to the left and the CTA button coming next to the right. That single utility class is how Bootstrap centering works. MB-2 and MB-LG-0 stands for margin bottom 2 on mobile, margin bottom 0 on large screens. Without this, the links would have unwanted bottom spacing on mobile in the collapsed view. For the dropdown, I am using Bootstrap's built-in dropdown class on the li dropdown toggle on the link and data BS toggle dropdown as the trigger. So I already scrolled to the bottom and notice I have to uncomment the Bootstrap JavaScript CDN now. Without it, clicking the dropdown toggle does nothing. This is the JavaScript dependency I mentioned at the start. Let's scroll back to the navbar. The drop-down items have a special structure. An icon span, then a strong for the title and a small for the description. This pattern is everywhere in modern SaaS products. You see it in verse cells now, linears now, stripes now. It makes a drop-down feel like a mini product page instead of just a list of links. Area current page on the active link is the accessibility attribute that tells screen readers which page is currently active. Always include this. After this next section, we add the CTA button, and I'm going to show you why that button looks nothing like Bootstrap's default button primary. The glow effect alone makes the whole navbar look 10 times more premium. Let's check what we have for this moment in browser. And here are our nav links. And here is our dropdown with submenu links. Let's close it. Let's add right side actions here. Let's check in browser and then return back to the code. So here we have these two actions. And let's check our code of these actions. So there are two elements, a ghost sign in link and a primary CTA button. The wrapper div uses deflex align items center gap 3 Bootstrap utilities. Deflex makes it flexbox. Align items center vertically centers both elements. Gap 3 adds spacing between them. MT-3 and MT-LG-0 adds top margin on mobile, so it doesn't stack directly against the nav links. 0 top margin on desktop. The sign-in link, a ghost link that looks like text but has subtle hover state. In most SaaS navbars, the sign-in option is intentionally de-emphasized compared to the CTA. You want people clicking Get Started, not Sign In. The CTA button has an arrow SVG inside it. This is a micro detail that signals action to users. The arrow is inline SVG. Same current color trick, so if I change the button text color, the arrow changes too. The hover animation will add in CSS. We'll make the arrow slide 3 pixels to the right. Tiny, feels great. For now the button looks like Bootstraps. Let's open it again and see that for now the button looks like Bootstrap's default blue. We are going to completely replace that style in the next step. The Hamburger menu. This is where Bootstrap 5's JavaScript does something really clever. Here I already added this button and it needs to go in a very specific place between the brand and the collapse div elements. Bootstrap expects this order in the DOM. If you put the toggler after the collapse div, things break. Order matters here. Let me expand this button code and let's examine its properties. Data-bs-toggle equal collapse. This is what tells Bootstrap's JavaScript to handle this button as a collapse trigger. Data-bs-target equal hash nav-content. This must match the ID of the collapse div. If these two don't match, the button does nothing. Area controls equal nav-content and area expanding equal false accessibility attributes. Bootstrap's JavaScript updates area expanding automatically when the menu opens and closes. This is how screen readers know the menu state. I'm not using Bootstrap's default toggler icon, the 3-line SVG with navbar toggler icon. Instead, I have 3 span class ob-toggler_bar elements that I'll animate with CSS in the next stage. These spans will transform into an X when the menu is open. The trick is the CSS attribute area expanded equal true. Bootstrap updates that attribute and our CSS responds to it. No JavaScript needed for the animation. Let's test what we have in browser. So I'm opening it and let's change the width of this screen. To do it, let's split our editor and let's close this one. So we already have Hamburger. Let's change width and here we have our navbar here. Right after this, we do the full CSS transformation. This is the moment the page goes from looking like a Bootstrap template to looking like a product. 2 minutes, I promise you it's worth it. This is the moment. We are going from Bootstrap template to actual product. All the changes will be made in style CSS file. The first thing I do is CSS custom properties, design tokens. This is the root block at the top of the file. Colors, font names, spacing, transition, speeds, border, all variables. If I want to change the primary indigo color, I change it in one place and everything updates. This is how real design systems work. The colors I'm using, this one for the deep background, almost black, slightly blue shifted. This one for indigo, that's Tailwind's Indigo 500. This one for the lighter indigo and that one for amber, dark technical premium. Now let's scroll to the navbar. So here we have the navbar background color with backdrop filter blur 12 pixels, saturate 150%. This gives the frosted glass effect you see in macOS and iOS. The RGBA at 75% opacity lets the page content bleed through slightly. Backdrop filter blurs whatever is behind the element, so as you scroll, the content underneath appears blurred. This only works if the navbar background is semi-transparent. Let's go to another interesting moment I want to show you. The brand name gradient. This is my favorite CSS trick. Background linear gradient with the next properties. What this does? Applies the gradient as the background of the text element, clips it to the text shape, and makes the text feel transparent so the background shows through. The result is gradient colored text. Completely CSS, no images. Another interesting CSS trick, the toggler animation. 3 spans, each a different width to look intentional rather than broken. When area expanding equals true, which Bootstrap sets automatically, the first bar rotates 45 degrees down, the middle bar disappears, and the third bar rotates 45 degrees up. Together they form an X. Pure CSS, zero JavaScript. Let's examine this behavior in browser, and let's split our screen. And here we have this animation. So when I click on Hamburger button, it transforms to the X and vice versa. The nav-link underline. Let's check it here in browser. Here it is. I'm using an after pseudo element, position absolute, scale to scale x0 by default. On hover, it scales to scale x1 with a transition on the transform property. This creates the sliding underline effect. So now let's try to remove this CSS style. Let's save it and let's see what we have. So just common orbit brand name text. Let's return it back. And also let's look at this rotation of our brand circle on hover. Let's also remove this CSS style, save, and let's refresh it. So now it's not rotating. Let's get it back. At this moment, when I scroll the content on the page, my navbar becomes invisible. Let's make this navbar stickier and let's add scroll shadow. 4 lines of CSS and about 12 lines of JavaScript. That's all this takes. In CSS, I'm adding position fixed to ob-navbar CSS class. This lifts it out of the document flow and pins it to the top. Fixed positioning means stay at this coordinate on the screen no matter what. Combined with top 0, left 0, right 0, it spans the full width. Now let's save this style file and let's refresh the page, and here we have this fixed navbar. And here we added is scrolled class. So there are 2 states, transparent by default and is scrolled after 60 pixels of scroll. The default state has no background. You can see the hero content right through it. When is scrolled is applied, the background becomes of the specified color with the background filter blur 20 pixels, a border on the bottom and a box shadow. Let's examine it in browser. So let's open navbar menu and we can see the content of the page. Let's scroll and we can see it disappears. Now let me explain the JavaScript function. So let's go to our JavaScript file. I already added this scroll function here. So here we add an event listener scroll on scroll, and the passive equal true option is important. It tells the browser I'm not going to call prevent default in this handler, so don't block scrolling while waiting for my code. Without passive equal true, the browser has to wait for your JavaScript to run before it can scroll the page. With it, totally smooth, no jank. Inside on scroll window, scroll Y more than 60 returns true or false. Navbar class list toggle is scrolled boolean, adds the class if true, removes it if false. One line clean. I also call on scroll once immediately when the page loads. This handles the edge case where someone refreshes the page mid-scroll. The navbar immediately shows the correct state instead of waiting for the next scroll event. And let's back to styles again. The placeholder div has padding top which is calculated. In the final version, we are offsetting the content by the height of the navbar so it doesn't slide under it. This is the offset the body fix I mentioned when we talked about the fixed top mistake. I opened again the web page in browser and I want to show you how isScrolled class is toggled when I scroll. So look at this place and I'm scrolling and it appears when I scroll more than 60 pixels below. That's our CSS hook responding to JavaScript in real time. The hero section is next. When it sits under this navbar, that's the moment the whole page starts to feel like a real product. Now hero time. This video is about Bootstrap navbar, so I will not spend a lot of time about this section. I will make a separate video about creating landing page and I will tell you more about hero sections there. So here I will just pay your attention on some key moments. So I already added this section, hero section, to HTML file and also added styles for this section in style CSS file. Let me open this file in browser. So what we have now, I am deliberately making this section left aligned, not centered. Here is why. Centered hero layouts were everywhere in range between 2080 and 2022. They still work, but they are starting to feel like a template. Left aligned layouts with a product visual on the right feel more editorial, more intentional, more like something a real product team shipped. Look at Linear, Vercel, Loom, they are all left aligned heroes. The Bootstrap grid does the heavy lifting. Row, align item center and G-5, it means 2 columns vertically centered with gutter 5 spacing. Let's scroll a little bit. Now left column has column 12 and column large 6, which means full width on mobile and half on desktop. Now let's find our right column. Here it is. Bootstrap's grid handles all the responsive behavior. The two op-hero orb divs are decorative. They're just divs with a background color, extreme border radius 50%, and filter equal blur 100 pixels. This is the blurred color orb effect you see on every modern dark mode page. It's not fancy, it's literally a div that's blurred into an abstract shape. The app mockup on the right is no external image, no Figma screenshot. It's all HTML and CSS. A Chrome header with 3 span dots, red, yellow, green, macOS style, a sidebar, and a Kanban board with task cards. Each task card has an ID, a title, and an avatar. This approach is better for a tutorial because you can see exactly how it's built. And it looks surprisingly realistic. The data animate equal fade up and data delay 100 attributes. These are hooks for CSS animation. So let's go to styles and find this attribute here. I have CSS keyframes that take elements from opacity 0, translate y 24 pixels to opacity 1, translate y 0. The data delay attribute sets the animation delay in CSS. What is the result? The result is each element fades up slightly after the one before it. It makes the hero feel polished and alive. Now let's observe this delay and other styles behavior in browser. So I'm going to refresh this page, and we can see that the content appears with a little delay, which looks really great. Now let's briefly examine the features section. So here we have our feature section. Here we have the feature header. Now there is a grid with 3 columns, 6 cards. Each card has Glassmorphism style, 3 columns for large screens, 2 columns for medium screens, and 1 column for mobile narrow screens. Now let's look at the code and see how we achieve this behavior. So here is our section features, our section header, and here is our grid with we have div wrapper with Bootstrap's row class and G4, and each card has its own wrapper, div element with class Bootstrap class column 12 for mobile screens, column medium 6, and for large screens column large 4. Having such styles, we achieve this behavior with 1 column for mobile screens, 2 for medium, and 3 for large screens. Now let's briefly examine the card styles. Here we have the background style with a subtle border and border radius equal large radius. On hover, the border brightness slightly. The mouse follow glow is probably the coolest effect on this page. Here is how it works. I suppose you can see it in your screen. So when I move mouse, the space around mouse becomes a little more whiter than the other space. So let's go to the styles. So here we have the card has a before pseudo element with background equal radial gradient, and this var mouse X and mouse Y are CSS custom properties set to 30% by default. On hover, they are hidden with opacity equals 0, and the gradient only appears when you actually hover. I also need a piece of JavaScript here. So here I listen to mouse move on each card. When the mouse moves, I calculate the X and Y position relative to the card, not the whole page. So here I define the percentage position of the mouse, and then I set those as CSS custom properties with card style set property for mouse X and mouse Y. The CSS gradient immediately re-renders at the new position. This creates a spotlight that follows your mouse around the card. It's the same trick used on Vercel's homepage. It costs us about 10 lines of JavaScript and 5 lines of CSS. Only 2 sections left. The integrations marquee is coming up, and I'm going to show you how to build an infinite scroll animation using pure CSS. No JavaScript, no libraries, 1 keyframe. Those 4 numbers, they don't just appear. they count up when they scroll into view. So here I am refreshing the page and they count up, and the same effect will be when I scroll to this element. This is intersection observer, the modern performant way to detect when elements enter the viewport. I create an observer with a threshold of 0.5, meaning fire when 50% of the element is visible. So let's change this value to 96%. Let's save it and let's make this element visible not fully. Let's refresh the page and we can see 0 numbers here, and let's scroll down a little bit. So when 96% of element is visible, it will count. So let's refresh again and let's change back to 50% and save it, and let's refresh. So the counting started. When a metric enters view, I start a counter animation using request animation frame. Each frame it calculates how much time has elapsed, applies an is out cubic curve, and updates the text. The is out means it starts fast and decelerates, which feels much more natural than a linear count. The HTML has 2 copies of the same logo list. This is the seamless loop trick. The animation moves the list 50% to the left, which is exactly the width of one copy of the list. By the time the first copy has slid off screen, the second copy is in the exact same position as where the first copy started. Loop is seamless. Now let's look at the CSS. The animation marquee scroll 30 seconds linear infinite. Linear timing, not is. If you use is, the animation accelerates and decelerates. Looks terrible on a marquee. Linear is what you want. The fade masks before and after pseudo elements on the wrapper with gradients from the background color to transparent. This hides the hard cut at the edges and makes the marquee look infinite. And let's find our pause. So I pause the animation on hover. Animation play state paused because it's an accessibility best practice. Users who are sensitive to motion can hover to stop it. The final polish. 4 things to add. The first one is the announcement bar. Here we have this bar. It's a slim stripe above the navbar with a yellow badge, announcement text, and a dismiss button here. The dismiss animation. Clicking the X adds a isDismissed class to the element, which sets height and opacity to 0 via CSS transformation. Let's go to the CSS file. I also updated the navbar's top property. The announcement bar is taking up space. The navbar needs to sit below it. So here is the value of top for navbar equals 0 when navbar is dismissed, like this situation. And when we refresh it, we need some space and set top value of height of the announcement bar. The next improvement is scroll reveal. Let's go back to HTML. So for each section, I added ob-reveal class. In CSS, let's go to CSS. So in CSS, this sets opacity equals 0 and transform translate y 20 pixels. When the intersection observer sees the section enters the viewport, it adds is visible, which transitions to opacity 0 and transform translate y equals 0. To see it in browser, let's scroll and see this element appearance. So let's refresh the page. It appeared. Let's refresh it again and see how on the bottom will appear our section. Here it is. When we will scroll faster, let's observe the next section appearance. I don't know whether you see it. This smooth appearance of each section. The next improvement is mobile nav autoclose. This is a UX fix that most tutorials skip. So on mobile, after you tap some link, let's click on it, we go to a section and the menu stays open. Annoying. The fix is in JavaScript, find all non-drop-down nav links inside the collapse and on click, call to hide it. The menu closes. Your users thank you. So let's comment this piece of code, save this document, let's refresh the page, and let's click on nav-link. So this menu is still opened. Let's uncomment, save, and refresh the page. And here we have this feature when this navbar is closed. Let's close this announcement bar. Let's make it wider to see our nav links. So now the active nav link is product. Here is this active state. And let's scroll a little bit and go to pricing. And now pricing makes active because we are on the pricing section now. I'm doing this manually with getBounding client rect function rather than Bootstrap's scroll spy component. It gives me more control and it's honestly simpler for this use case. When the section's top edge goes above 100 pixels from the top of the viewport, it becomes current. And with that, we are done. Let's walk through what we built. The announcement bar at the top, dismissible. Navbar below it, fixed, transparent, gains frosted glass on scroll. Hamburger on mobile with the bar to X animation. Brand with an SVG logo that orbits on hover. Nav-links with sliding underline indicators. A drop-down with icon and description for each item. Sign-in, ghost link and a growing CTA button. Hero section below, left aligned with indigo to amber gradient on the EM text. Sub-headline, 2 CTA buttons, primary and ghost, social proof, and a full-up mockup on the right showing simulated Kanban board. Matrix bar, 4 numbers that count up as they enter view. Feature 6 Glassmorphism cards with mouse follow glow. Integrations, an infinite scrolling marquee. Pricing 3 cards featured 1 with indigo glow. CTA banner, footer with 4 columns. Every section fades in as you scroll. Mobile, fully responsive, Hamburger works, menu auto closes. This is what Bootstrap 5 is capable of when you stop treating it like a limitation and start treating it like a starting point. If you want the complete source code, all 12 stages, every commit, every file, the link is in the description and pinned in the comments. Download it, open each stage folder in your browser, compare them side by side, see exactly what changes at each step. If this video helped you, and I genuinely hope it did, hit the like button and subscribe. It costs you nothing and it directly helps me make more videos like this one. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.